You should have already made a copy of Energy Flow and Ecosystem student notes. If you haven't, please do so. Highlight what I highlight. So, this is part of our ecology unit, and some key concepts that you need to be aware of is the idea of interdependence, the idea that we are all connected. So, this unit is about living organisms and their relationship to other living organisms, but also to the environment overall, which includes both biotic living factors and abiotic or non living factors. So, ecology is just that. Ology stands for the study of, and eco is referring to those interactions between organisms and their environment. We're also going to circle back and talk a little bit about the biogeochemical cycles and how nutrients cycle through the environment versus the interactions of feeding relationships and energy flow through a system and how they are different. A very easy test question would be the levels of ecological organization from small to large, and we could actually add biosphere after biome. So, going through from small to large, a species is a group of individuals who can then also reproduce and produce uh, offspring that can also reproduce. So, think of zebras. A population would be a group of zebras in a specific area. A community would be the zebras, the elephants, the dung beetles, the acacia trees, the savanna grass, all in the same area. When we get to ecosystem, the next level, we start to bring in those abiotic factors. So we are going to have the zebras, the lions, the elephants, the dung beetles, the acacia trees. Let's make this a little bigger. Just kidding. The acacia trees, the savanna grass, and then also abiotic factors like the water hole, the air temperature, the soil composition. Biomes, think of the globe, the earth, and think of latitude, the imaginary horizontal uh, stripes around the planet. So here in Georgia, we live in a temperate forest. We have seasons. And if you went across the country on the same latitude, you would find the same kind of climate. And then a biosphere is the largest. It's all the regions on and above the earth, like birds fly in the air, where life can be supported. So, we've talked a little bit about how nutrients cycle, and we spent a lot of time tracing, say, a water vapor all the way around. And we talked about the cycle. And I told you that when we got to feeding relationships, we were really going to talk about energy flow and how it's different. Energy flow flows in one direction. So, most of the time, the source is going to be the sunlight, and then energy flows to the producers, and then it flows to the consumers. I say most of the time because we're going to get to the next slide and talk about some very interesting individuals. You should know that producers and autotrophs are the same thing. And typically on tests, that's not going to be defined for you. So you need to use both of those terms interchangeably and know that they go together. I will say that the ecology unit is a really good unit to make yourself some flip cards. So if that's something that you used to do or something that you find useful, this is a really good unit for that. So, autotrophs are self feeders. These organisms, in this case for photosynthesis, can capture energy from sunlight and convert it into food in the form of sugars. We've talked about this earlier in the school year. There is another set of autotrophs who use chemosynthesis. Synthesis means to create, and then chemo obviously refers to chemicals. So deep down in the ocean, far away from the sun, next to hydrothermal vents, which are volcanic vents that spew all sorts of crazy stuff. So the sulfur, the phosphorus, the nitrogen, lava. All right, it's hot. It's gross. But these organisms, these worms, for example, which are about 6 feet tall, are capable of pulling those chemicals from the vent and converting it to food. So these are also autotrophs. When I was your age, we didn't know about this stuff at the bottom of the ocean. We thought it was probably going to be a barren place. And then we sent down remote controlled vehicles. And lo and behold, there were these lush ecosystems down there, which these worms that could pull, and other organisms that could pull chemicals from the water, formed the basis of these food chains and these food webs. And it was quite amazing. So if you're not a producer, you're a consumer. Okay, so consumers and heterotrophs go together. We could stand out in the sun all day, but we cannot convert that sunlight into food. We have to eat either the plants or we eat the things that eat the plants. There are several different types of consumers. Vor as a suffix means eat, and then the prefixes tell you what type of eaters they are. So herbivores are plant eaters, carnivores are meat eaters, omnivores eat both plants and meat. The human skull, we are made to be omnivorous. If you look at our teeth, we have incisors for biting in the front. We have canines; those are the sharp teeth. Sorry, that rip and shred. We have molars that grind. So even though some of us choose not to eat meat, we are meant to eat both plants and meat. Students typically confuse detrivores, which are also scavengers, with decomposers. Detrivores are organisms that eat the dead. So think of a buzzard or a vulture, that unfortunate squirrel that got ran over by a car. And then you see the buzzards pulling it to the side of the road and eating it. Those are detrivores. They are consuming um, dead, dead food. And they are, using it for their metabolical processes. Whereas decomposers, they are recycling organic matter. Remember, we talked about fungal infections and how those hyphae come in and break down tissue and absorb the nutrients. So detrivores aren't doing that. They're just not hunting their prey. They're just taking advantage of coming about a scene where is dead food items that they can consume. So now that we sort of understand the players, we are going to talk about how this information can be modeled or displayed. So, two types of ways that we display energy relationships and how energy moves through an ecosystem or through food chains and food webs. So, a chain, think of a chain, think of something that is linked together in a single line. Whereas a web, think of a spider web, is a little bit more messy and you have lots of chains and they interact and go different places and they're more complex. And that's what you should think of when you think of a food chain versus a food web. Again, notice at the top, I am just pointing out that energy flows through the ecosystem in one direction, from the sun or those inorganic chemicals to producers to the consumers. We have several different examples of food chains and food webs. So, typical mistakes that students make: either they'll draw me a food web and they will not include any arrows, and they'll just have lines that don't really demonstrate the relationship between organisms. Or they will put the arrows in the wrong direction. The arrow should point towards the eater. It's showing where the energy is going. So, for example, we have down here, we have the grass, we have an arrow pointing to the rabbit, and then we have an arrow pointing from the rabbit to the fox. So the rabbit is eating the grass, and the fox will eat the rabbit. It's showing you where the energy is going. These are models. So what I am not saying is that this is an actual ecosystem where there is one tree and one deer and one rabbit, 15 blades of grass. That is not what we're saying. We're saying within this ecosystem, these are the feeding relationships between these particular types of organisms, these species that live within this ecosystem. So make sure your arrows are pointing in the right direction and understand that in some cases things might be the predator, and then in other circumstances they may be the prey. So if you were given a web on a test, you might be asked to make a chain. You might be asked what type of consumer, or if it's a producer. You might be asked what level it is on. Okay. The other thing that you're going to be responsible for is you're going to be responsible for how energy itself is calculated from trophic level to trophic level. This is probably the easiest math that you are going to do in a biology class. We can model this through the use of pyramids, and you can make a pyramid of just about anything in ecology. So you can talk about biomass by massing all the organisms in a system. You could do a pyramid of numbers where you physically count every organism in a system. And you can also look at energy and how much energy is transferred. Now, if you'll notice what's highlighted here, you'll see that we are not, as living organisms, are not very efficient eaters. No living organism is, and most of it is wasted as heat, and used up in other living purposes. So it's not just like you're sweating, but on a cellular level your cells create heat. The pyramid itself is a physical visual reminder of what is going on in any system. So you'll notice that a pyramid is more broad at the bottom. It doesn't matter what we're talking about, biomass, energy, numbers, there's more at the bottom than there is at the top. There's always going to be more producers than there are consumers. And part of this is because we are not efficient eaters. And so a lot of that energy is wasted, and it also takes a lot of energy and a lot of food, frankly, to sustain those upper level consumers. And this is why you typically don't see a lot of apex predators together. It takes a lot to feed a great white shark. It takes a lot to feed a grizzly bear. So typically, apex predators are going to be in pairs or solitary. Of course, there are some exceptions. We've got wolves that hunt in packs. We have orcas that travel in pods, but they cooperatively hunt. And then they also cover a greater territory because it takes a lot of food and a lot of energy to sustain those large apex predators. So, the easiest math you're ever going to do to figure out how much energy is transferred from level to level, you're just going to simply move the decimal point over one place. So, if you start with 100,000, the next level up is going to have 10,000, and then 1,000, and then 100, and so on and so forth. So you can see that the energy diminishes at a very quick rate. And again, that should be a reminder of how much energy it takes to sustain, how inefficient it is, and the reason why you won't have typically more than 4 levels in a chain. So you just have some different examples of what you may see on a test. So we could remove the numbers and ask for you to calculate it if we gave you a level. We could remove the labels and ask you to label it. We could give you a food chain out of order, and you would be expected to be able to put it in place. Notice the decomposers are out here at the side. Why? Because everything that's alive eventually will die, and decomposers decompose everything. These are just different examples. So this is just showing you the math. So other questions, you will definitely be asked if there's such and such amount at the producer level, how much it is at the top level. Or this has how much there is at the top level, how much was there at the producer level. You might also be asked to tell us how much is lost by heat. So you can multiply it by 0.9 to take away that 90%, or you can do simple subtraction. Either one will work. So here is your example that you can do on your own and check it in with me. I think that is about it.